Well, here we are, folks. Prasicor here with a review of the last episode of Prehistoric Planet, Forests. So, did the series go out with a bang? Or with a whimper? I must be an outlier here because the responses I've seen from many folks have it that this is the best episode of the series, when for me it was the overall weakest. While there were some standout segments, and the natural spectacle continues to astound, this episode suffered the greatest from the series' most consistent weakness, the underdeveloped narratives. This one felt the most disjointed, with many questionable decisions on how certain events unfolded. Forests is the only episode that doesn't begin with a dramatic hook. We open on a group of Austro-poseidon crashing through the forests of Brazil, eating the leaves of the fallen trees. And that's pretty much it. The behavior is nothing special, and the design of the Austro-poseidon isn't really stand out, especially compared to the other sauropods we've seen so far. If every episode began this way, with a small teaser, it wouldn't be as bad, but considering the sheer drama of the other opening segments, this one just feels wanting. The next segment is a definite step up, though it also leaves something to be desired. We follow a herd of Triceratops as they enter a cave, traveling deep underground in total darkness. Footage from this story makes use of static shots reminiscent of wild camera traps, and handheld footage is extremely close to the animals, who are packed tightly together. The overall effect is very claustrophobic. The animation here is also superb. In complete darkness, the Triceratops move carefully, still managing to trip and stumble as they go. In the confusion, one calf is separated and inadvertently left behind in the pitch black, calling mournfully into the void. Its voice cuts right through you. But just as the tension is ramping up, the herd emerges in an illuminating sunbeam to their final destination, a deposit of clay which they consume to neutralize the toxins in their food. And as for the lost calf? Oh, he's fine. He just shows up, having found his way, no problem. It really makes you wonder what the point of having the calf get lost in the first place was if he just shows up in the next scene, no harm done. The clay-eating behavior is at least a novel and interesting one to showcase. Next up is the scene everyone was hoping to see from the trailer. A lone male Carnotaurus clears a section of forest, turning it into a stage for one of the most ridiculous mating displays ever seen. As a female approaches, he twirls in place, raising his tail and letting out low-frequency bellows. But the highlight of his performance is, of course, when he flashes his tiny arms, marked with electric blue scales, and spins them around as if he's doing a rather pathetic attempt at pretending to be a helicopter. The music here is very effective. Though the visual is obviously meant to be humorous to us, to the Carnotaurus, this is a serious and dignified affair. The music plays up the seriousness, with orchestral highlights akin to something in a ballet. This really helps to sell the comedy. One general rule of comedy is that it should be played straight, not silly. Humorous situations are rarely humorous to the people actually experiencing them. Sadly for our Lord of the Dance, the female isn't interested, and he goes back to the tedious task of keeping the clearing free of plant matter. This segment is largely effective. Though only about 4 minutes long, it manages to establish a character that we can sympathize with, showcase a distinct and entertaining bit of behavior that brings us to something that approaches a climax, if you'll pardon the word, and then has a satisfyingly unsatisfying resolution. Poor bastard. This segment is roughly the same length as the Austro-poseidon bit, but it makes much more effective use of its time. My only gripe with this segment is that all the strongest segments so far work best when they feature multiple different kinds of animals interacting with one another. Hell, even the Dreadnoughtus fight had enantiornithines for scale, but the two Carnotaurus are the only animals to make an appearance. It feels like, in an episode entitled Forests, we should see more animals given that forests are filled with them. Moving to China, we drop in on a gaggle of Corythoraptor as they forage for ginkgo nuts among the forest floor. But they are being stalked by a lone female Qianzhousaurus. While her first attempt to snatch one fails, she has better luck on her second try. The Qianzhousaurus is the real star of this part, with a fantastic color scheme that suits her well in the forest habitat. There were actual shots where she was so well camouflaged, I couldn't make her out. Likewise, the animation of her stalking is phenomenal. There is such an intensity in the focus of her eyes, And the careful deliberation of her movements really helps to sell us on the fact that this is a strenuous, difficult, and important task for her. The animation of her actually catching the Corythoraptor is exciting and extremely dynamic. My only recommendation for this scene is that she should have failed a second time, finally succeeding on her third. 3's the magic number after all, and it would even better communicate how hard being a predator is. As she moves away with her prey clutched in her jaws, the action moves to North America, where a forest fire ravages the landscape. An Edmontosaurus and her calf attempt to flee the flames, but as the fire leaves behind ash-covered trees, animals begin to appear. An Atrociraptor makes use of a smoldering stick as an insecticide, getting rid of parasites on its wings. An Ankylosaur, most likely Anodontosaurus, chows down on charcoal to neutralize the toxins in its plant food. These are some neat behaviors, though the segment suffers from repetition. We already saw a forest fire in Ice Worlds, and the Anodontosaurus eating charcoal feels too similar to the Triceratops eating clay. If the two bits were in different episodes, then it might be okay, but as it is, they just feel too close together. And by the way, in case you were wondering, I actually messaged Darren Naish about the presence of a Atrociraptor in this scene, and if it was at all inspired by the fact that a Atrociraptor also appears in Jurassic World Dominion. But he claims that he had no idea that a Atrociraptor would be in Dominion, and that it was decided on years before anyone knew about the Atrociraptor in the movie. So either he's lying, which isn't impossible, or there's just no reason to think that the two are in any way related. Pure serendipity. Hey, stranger things have happened. As a full moon rises over a forest in Mongolia, we join a trio of baby Therizinosaurus, an animal so rarely depicted in infant form. The 3 of them are adorable, with big eyes and pot bellies that make them immediately endearing. Looking up, they see a beehive hanging oh so temptingly over a fallen log, leaning conveniently against the tree trunk. Hoping for a taste of something sweet, Larry, Moe, and Curly claw their way up the fallen log, though they're not exactly experts. They finally reach the golden prize, only to be instantly swarmed by the protective bees, causing them to lose their footing and drop back to the forest floor after only a few licks. Luckily for them, an adult Therizinosaurus happens to stop by. With the most casual flick of its enormous claws, it knocks the hive down and helps itself to a mouthful of honeycomb, leaving several bits left behind for the babies to snack on. You can't not love the baby Therizinosaurus. Again, getting over the fact that it's just so novel to see this genus depicted as babies, they show a lot of character and personality, especially as they struggle to get up the fallen log. It's slapstick while remaining grounded, and it never devolves to cartoony levels. There's a clear motivation, an obstacle, actions taken to overcome that obstacle, and then a resolution. Natural history storytelling at its simplest. Probably the best segment of the episode. The final segment of not only the episode, but the series takes us to the legendary Hateg Island, populated by dwarf dinosaurs and giant pterosaurs. We see a few of the island's inhabitants, including the hadrosaur Telmatosaurus, the rhabdodontid Zalmoxes, and the giant Ashdarchid Hatzegopteryx. Sadly, there isn't really much of a story here. We see the Hatzegopteryx eat one of the Zalmoxes, but that's the only source of conflict, and it lasts less than a second. It feels like the main point of this segment is to be a sort of wrap-up to the series proper. The final shots showcase the animals, including the sauropod Paludatitan, emerging from the forest onto the beach to socialize and to take advantage of the salt-coated vegetation. Finally, the Hatzegopteryx takes to the sky, flying off into the sunset. And the adventure continues. The series bookends by both starting and ending on a beach, first at sunrise, then at sunset. I also applaud the series for not ending with the KPG mass extinction event. Not only would that have been cliched, but it also would not have fit with the theme of the show, which aims to show us how dinosaurs lived, not how they died. Every other episode ended on an uplifting note, and there was no sense of ominous or impending doom throughout the rest of the series. So to suddenly change course and end with a literal apocalypse would not have fit at all with the tone of the rest of the show, and it makes for a lovely change of pace. For me, dinosaurs have always been symbols of hope and success, so it was great to see them go out on such a high note. Having said that, I can't help but feel that the Hateg Island setting was criminally underutilized. Patag Island is one of the most fascinating of Mesozoic ecosystems, with plenty of opportunities to talk about its unusual lineages and ecology. But the site wasn't even named, let alone explained in any detail. Though Forests continues the wondrous spectacle that we've come to expect from Prehistoric Planet, it feels like a bit of an underwhelming finale, especially for a series that had achieved such astronomical highs earlier in its run. Segments will create tension, but then instantly resolve it in the next scene. Other segments don't make effective use of their time. In the Therizinosaurus segment, we open with bioluminescent mushrooms, which are beautiful to look at, but how do they connect to anything else in the story? Same with the sleeping sauropod we see afterwards. Too many of the stories simply feel like dinosaurs in forests, whereas I think the story should have been focused on the forests themselves and how dinosaurs interact with them. Using this framework, the forest fire segment would have made for a better finale, giving the episode as a whole a sense of climax and resolution while still ending on a hopeful note. I would have also consolidated it with the forest fire scene from Ice Worlds to avoid repetition. Nonetheless, while I would rate this the weakest episode overall, with a score of 3.8, it still stands as an incredible achievement in natural splendor and technological innovation. With each episode covered individually, next I'll do a general series review, seeing how all these various highs and lows coalesced into a singular experience. This is where I'll go more into detail on aspects of the show that were more consistent throughout each episode, and think about what, if anything, the series could have done better with the benefit of hindsight. Until then, I'll see everyone in the next video.